Hello, Clutter Warrior. Today's topic is when everything is precious, nothing is precious. And if upon hearing that, you immediately have a reaction, it's totally fine. Don't worry about it. And it's an invitation or an opportunity for you to look at where's that feeling coming from? What feels threatening, or how do you feel threatened or challenged when you consider the idea that when everything is precious, nothing is precious? There's a few things I want to cover. One, I'm going to share a story with you about a private client and some work that we did in cleaning out her grandmother's house. And the other is just the idea of looking at everything isn't equal. If you take a quick scan around your home, your office, your spaces, right? If you look around your spaces and if in a general sense, you are thinking, well, I love all of this stuff. I mean, I brought it home. I accumulated it bit by bit, piece by piece. They all have utility. They're all beautiful. I chose them all. If any of those sentences resonate with you, it's an opportunity for you to look at how much truth there is in that statement, because clearly your delicious cashmere sweater is probably not equal to your toilet brush. They both have utility, uh, but they don't have equal value. And I'm not talking about monetary value necessarily. So as you take the scan around your spaces and you glance off of various things and you think like, oh, I love that. Oh, I love that. Oh, that was great. Oh, I remember where I got that. If that's the first place you go, that's totally fine. There's no problem with that. My invitation to you is to drill down deeper into that and think about, when you think about all of these things, if there isn't enough room for all of them in your space or spaces, something has to go. And how will you determine what that thing is? From my point of view, it returns to both your core values as well as the intrinsic value of the object. And again, not exclusively or not necessarily the monetary value, but the value that it has to you. How evocative of a feeling, a time, a place is it? How much money did it cost you or cost somebody else? How did it arrive in your life? Was it a gift that's been handed down over generations? Is it a gift that you recently received? Is it something that you purchased for yourself? Did you find it on the street? All of those things, and there's no right or wrong answers here, just all of those things are opportunities for you to look at its origin in your life and how significant that is when you compare it to objects that are similar. What we want to almost always avoid is looking at these things as one-off decisions. When any given item is pitted against its siblings, it becomes much easier to see that all things aren't equal. So if you put all of your books together and then you drill down into them and decide which books am I going to keep, it becomes easier to decide, I'll still read this book, or I haven't read this book, and I will now make time to read this book. This book I've already read, I haven't read, I'm not particularly compelled to crack it open. I can let this go and keep this. One off, you could easily get lost in the story of, oh yeah, somebody recommended this book, or I heard about it on a podcast, or I saw it on television, or I saw it on somebody's bookcase and I really wanted to read it, but I haven't made the time to read it. So story, I will make the time to read it even though you haven't. And we don't know how long it's been laying around, right? But when two books are next to each other, it becomes easier in comparing and contrasting them to make a decision about which book stays and which book goes. So that's the tool to use as you're trying to make the decision. Now, in closing, I'm going to just share a story with you. When I was working with a private client to clean out her grandmother's home, we came across 2 silver objects in Grandma's house. Grandma had lived through the Great Depression. So one of the silver objects was a ball of aluminum foil under the kitchen sink. That's, Grandma, when she would use tin foil, she would wrap it around the ball, and it was, it was a sizable ball, and she would save the aluminum foil because she remembered what it's like to not have tin foil. So she didn't want that to ever happen again. I mean, those were tough times. I can only imagine. I can only imagine. Any recessions or anything that we've been through pales in comparison to what they went through during the Great Depression. So I get it. So that's the ball of aluminum foil. We also found a sterling silver tea set. Now, in vague land, 2 silver objects, they both belong to Grandma. Grandma's gone. If we stopped right there, they're both the last things of Grandma. They're both silver. We should keep them both. Of course, we don't need to keep them both. The ball of aluminum foil, she decided. I mean, I'm not really there to make decisions. I'm there to coach and encourage and support. So my client made the decision that she would recycle the ball of aluminum foil. The sterling silver tea set, we sold at auction for $22,000. So in vague land, they're of equal value, both Grandma, both meaningful, good story behind each of them. In reality, in practical land, they're not equivalent at all. We mourn Grandma's loss. We have a tender feeling about Grandma's survival of the Great Depression and her commitment to not necessarily recycling, but certainly reusing aluminum foil. So hats off to Grandma. And Grandma's gone. We miss Grandma, but we don't need to save the aluminum foil ball to keep Grandma's memory alive. We also are not serving tea in a sterling silver tea set. And by we, I mean my client, right? So that was easy enough to let go of and to swap it out for money, because it didn't, while it was a beautiful thing, it didn't really mean anything to her. So in some ways, the emotional attachment was greater around the ball of aluminum foil, because that actually was Grandma's hand. Grandma built that ball of aluminum foil, and Grandma was all over it, literally and figuratively. So in some ways, letting that go and really acknowledging Grandma's passing was much more poignant and tender with the ball of aluminum foil. The $22,000 certainly came in handy. So you can see, right? If we stay in vague land, we can gloss over and things become blurry and it's hard to make sense out of what we're looking at. But when we get clear and we, again, return to our core values, your core values, and the utility that something's going to have in your life, it becomes much easier to make the decision about what will stay and what will go. That's it for today's episode. Thanks for tuning in. I look forward to being back with you again real soon.